Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm always excited to share more information about Le Fashion Lab. The Fashion Lab was founded with the purpose of disrupting the fashion education industry. We know that there are many people out there like you who are passionate about studying professional fashion design, and the resources that are currently available are not enough to satisfy exactly what you need. But before we get into that, I'd love to share a little bit more information about me. Hi, I'm Nicola, and I'm the founder of Le Fashion Lab. Le Fashion Lab was founded in 2009 in Atlanta, Georgia, but it wasn't until 2018 that we switched our program to offer a fashion design certificate, which you can take as a 1 year track or a 2 year track. And this certificate program equips you from A to Z with how to start and run a fashion design business with an emphasis on fashion design and garment construction. But we'll also get into more about that later. So back to me. I have a master's degree in fashion design from the Savannah College of Art and Design. And while teaching at the Savannah College of Art and Design, I was also the fashion education instructor of the community education department for over 3 years. In addition to that, I've taught at the Clark Atlanta University for a while in their fashion design and art program. Apart from the academic setting, I also have experience as a fashion designer at both a corporate and a small business level. So on the corporate side, I was a clothing designer for Target at their headquarters in Minneapolis, Minnesota for about 6 or 7 years. And I was also a fashion designer for Abercrombie and Fitch for a while as well. And that's on the larger corporate side. On the smaller business side, I helped to start two different businesses, fashion design businesses in the Atlanta area. One was a company that was catered to tween denim design. And the other, which I did like a year or two after, was a company that was catered to women's wear clothing. So this is just to let you know that I have a wide amount of experience from both an academic or teaching setting and also from a corporate design background and also a small business background to have a strong handle on the entire process of fashion design and how it works in different scenarios. And when I say I was a designer, I like to tell you a little bit more about what that means. So as a professional fashion designer, I was the one responsible for coming up with the concept for a collection, and from coming up with a concept, researching the competitive landscape to see what other products were available at the time, sketching out ideas, presenting it to a team of other designers, merchants, and product managers. And finally, when the designs were approved, handing them over to a technical design team. And the design team and the technical design team works hand in hand to make sure that the product will come back fitting according to the desired fit. And the technical design team would then work with the manufacturers overseas to make sure that the product was being assembled appropriately. And then when it comes back to us, we check the fit to make sure it looks exactly as we intended. And ultimately, when all is approved, the garments end up on the sales floor. So just to give you an idea of what it means to be a designer at a corporate level, and also at a small business or entrepreneurial level. So that was my job for a long time. So why did we start Le Fashion Lab? Well, as I mentioned before, we noticed that there is a need for professional fashion design education. But when you really start to look into it, you realize that the only options that are available to you for studying professional fashion design is a traditional fashion college. But for a lot of people, the option of a traditional fashion college is limited and impractical. Why? Maybe you need to work. So being able to quit your full-time job to go to school full-time is not something that's convenient to you. Or maybe you're not ready or willing to make that kind of financial investment, because a lot of these programs, you're talking about between $80,000 to $180,000 investment to study what it is that you really need to study. And we'll come back to that point soon. But in general, we realize that there are a lot of people who want to be able to study professional fashion design, want to have access to this industry. But when you start to do the research, you realize that there is no option out there that really fits what you're looking for. So I definitely realized that we could help to facilitate this change. And that's how we started Le Fashion Lab, with the mission of disrupting the fashion education industry. So there are 6 ways that Le Fashion Lab is fixing the fashion education industry. The first way is that we offer one-on-one attention. So what does this mean? You might be surprised if you've never been in a traditional fashion classroom, but a lot of times a teacher is working with 60, 40, 20 students to one instructor. And what this means is that if there's so many students in a class, you end up you're not getting the one-on-one attention that you really need to learn a subject matter that takes a lot of hands-on skills. So you end up having to fight your classmates for attention. I've witnessed students failing classes multiple times, and I've also witnessed others who they might not have failed, but they just did average or mediocre in the class, when had they been able to get the one-on-one attention they need, they would have been really able to thrive. So if you want to go back to thinking about someone who is failing a class multiple times, it's frustrating, not only because you failed the class, but also because you have to retake this class and pay for it again. So you might have budgeted for a certain price, but because you keep having to take classes multiple times, then that budget is blown or thrown out because you have to pay for the class again. So like I've mentioned, I've personally seen classmates having to retake classes multiple times before finally passing, or students just doing mediocre in a class because they weren't able to get that one-on-one attention. So how is Le Fashion Lab fixing this? We're fixing this by making sure that our classrooms or class size never goes more than 8 students to one instructor, as we value a hands-on approach to learning, and we want to make sure that none of our students get left behind. Additionally, the second way that Le Fashion Lab is fixing the fashion education industry is that we don't waste your time or money. So many people are surprised, or many traditional fashion college students are surprised, but it takes you about 2 years or so in a traditional fashion college before you actually start taking your fashion classes. So when you think about this, the way a traditional fashion college is set up is that you have to take your general education requirements before you get to your major. So if you think about it, you have to take your math, your English, your psychology, your science classes before you actually get to start taking your fashion classes. And if you're thinking about spending about $4,000 on average per class, you're thinking about spending about $35,000 to $75,000 before you get to start taking the classes that you were interested in the first place. Additionally, I've spent a lot of time evaluating different fashion college curriculum and realizing that many of the classes that are included in their curriculum really do not have anything to do with setting you up for success. When you think about it, most colleges require 120 credit hours before you can graduate from a bachelor degree program or a 4-year program. And for them, it doesn't really matter so much about the value that they are offering in these 120 credit hours, so long as they're getting you to that number. So I've realized that a lot of the classes that are being added in these curriculum are just our curricula. Yeah, in a lot of the classes being added in these fashion college curriculum are really just fluff classes that are not key to setting you up for success to either get your fashion design business started or to get employed in the fashion design marketplace. I'll give you an example of one student that we have with us right now. She is also dual enrolled at Kennesaw State University. And the reason she decided to enroll at Le Fashion Lab is that she had 2 different interests in the fashion design field. She was interested in fashion illustration, and she was also interested in pattern making. But when she looked at her college curriculum, she realized that there was only one class in fashion illustration and one class in pattern making. And for her to be able to be well trained in both of these areas, she knew that one class was not going to be sufficient. Additionally, one class wasn't going to be enough to help her to decide which area she would rather explore or which area she was best suited for. One class wouldn't be enough for her to decide if she wanted to pursue fashion illustration or if she wanted to pursue pattern making. So she came to the Fashion Lab because she knows that those are two, or she knew that those were two of the subject areas that we delve deep into. I should also mention that if you already have a degree, it really doesn't matter. You're not excluded from these general education prerequisites, and you will find yourself having to retake them, even if you've already taken similar classes before. So how is the Fashion Lab fixing this? You might already know, but from the very first day that you take classes with us, you will start with fashion classes. From the very first day that you are enrolled with us, either in our in-person classes or an online class, you will be taking a fashion design class. And needless to say, that's all we do. So all the classes that you'll be taking at the Fashion Lab will be fashion classes. Additionally, what is the third way that the Fashion Lab is fixing the fashion education industry? The third way is that we offer flexible classes so you can continue to make money and not have to build your life around our program. What does this mean? If you currently have a job and you're thinking about attending a traditional fashion college, know this. Most fashion classes are during the day, all day, every day. So what that means is, in the beginning, you might be able to find a few classes online, or you might be able to find a few evening classes that work with your work schedule. But soon you will realize that for you to be able to complete their program, you will end up having to quit your job, because most of their classes are during the day and all day, like every day of the week, except for weekends, of course. So what most of our students have realized is that they'll end up having to quit their jobs to be able to attend a traditional fashion college and pursue their fashion goals. There are no evening or weekend programs. So quitting your job means that you'll have to figure out how to pay your bills while you're in school. What I personally witnessed was a lot of the students that I went to fashion college with, they would end up taking out more student loan money to be able to pay their rent, their car note, car insurance, pay for groceries while they're enrolled in fashion college, which feels fine while you're in the process of everything. But after you've completed the program and you need to start paying back those student loans, it doesn't feel quite as good anymore. So quitting your job means that you have to figure out how to pay your bills while you're in school. For me, what I personally witnessed was students taking out more student loans than they needed to cover their tuition and books, enough to be able to cover their rent and their car note and their So quitting your job means that you have to figure out how to pay your bills while you're in school. What I personally witnessed was students taking out more student loans than they needed to cover their tuition and books, and enough to be able to take out enough to be able to cover their rent and their car note and their car insurance, groceries, such the like. So that might feel fine when you're in the middle of your fashion design program and you're not repaying anything. But as soon as you're done with your program and you have to start repaying it, then you realize that that might not have been the wisest decision. So how is the Fashion Lab fixing this? Le Fashion Lab always offers two different scheduling options depending on which, whether you're coming in the August program or the January program. We have a part-time daytime program, which is 2 days during the week from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we also have an evening program that's 2 days during the week, 6 to 8:30 p.m. and a weekend program that's on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So what this means is that you have the flexibility you need to be successful and not have to give up making money and taking care of yourself in the interim while you're studying with us. So the fourth way that Le Fashion Lab is fixing the fashion education industry is that we set you up for success to run your fashion business. So what does this mean? So the fourth way that we're fixing the fashion education industry is that we set you up for success to run your fashion business. So what does this mean? After looking at different fashion college curriculum, I realized that most do not have any fashion entrepreneurship classes. Yes, they may have some business classes, they may have some merchandising classes, but no fashion entrepreneurship classes. And this means that most students are graduating with an understanding of how to make clothes, but no idea of what to do next to get their, to start their own successful fashion businesses. So if you can imagine graduating with $180,000 in debt, and yes, you have the ability to sew and make clothes, but you have no idea how to get started pricing your garments or creating a business plan that you need to think through the details of your business. So most graduates are literally lost after graduating. They don't know what to do next. And I've personally witnessed that one of the reasons this is because there are a lot of instructors in the traditional fashion college scene that do not necessarily have a lot of experience, or they don't have any experience at all running their own business. So this is not information that they can pass on to you. How is Le Fashion Lab fixing this? At Le Fashion Lab, all our instructors are talented and have been working in their field their entire lives. So combined, we have over 50 years of experience among all of our instructors at Le Fashion Lab. I've also personally created the curriculum and coursework to ensure that you have everything that you need that is relevant to your entrepreneurial success based on my background and experience. The fifth way that Le Fashion Lab is fixing the fashion education industry is that we have dedicated instructors who are invested in your success. And whenever I say this, I feel a little strange because, you know, if you're working with an instructor, you automatically expect that this person is invested in your success. But if you think about it, if you have an instructor who has about 60 students that she's working with, it's very difficult for her to pay attention to what you and your goals are. It's just too overwhelming dealing with so many students. So at Le Fashion Lab, we make sure that our instructors are dedicated to your success because they are caring and invested in education, but also because of our low student to instructor class ratio that actually makes it possible for them to bond with you and know what your goals are and to help you get there. I'll give you an example of something that happened. I'll give you an example of something I experienced in traditional fashion college. I had a classmate in my program, super talented. He was an international student coming over from his country, already had a bachelor's degree in fashion design and was enrolled in my program on a full scholarship, super talented. And we were working on a class assignment. In our class, we had to do the typical things that's required in a traditional fashion college, come up with a concept for a collection, sketch it out, and then actually make the clothes using our sewing and garment construction skills. And Another assignment that the instructor added to that particular class was that she wanted us to go through the nitty-gritty details of writing down all of the instructions for sewing our garments. So she'd say, let's say I'm making a blouse, I'd have to write down, sew the side seams together, insert the sleeve, add interfacing, like every single detail that it takes to make your garment, you'd have to write it out. And that was already challenging for those of us whose first language was English. But this particular student, English was not his first language, and he really struggled with the assignment. He got no extra help with completing his assignment, ended up getting a C in the class for a project that was completely irrelevant. He got a C in the class, ended up losing his scholarship and dropping out of the program. So I've also mentioned to you that I've watched students be belittled and downgraded, told that they have no taste, and failed multiple times. I'll give you another example. I had a colleague of mine who was also enrolled in the graduate program, and she was one class shy of graduating when she had to go through her graduate portfolio review. So what the graduate portfolio review is, it's a process where you bring in all of the garments you've made up to that point, all of the work you've done, including sketches that you've done at that point, and you set them up in a display for the instructors to come and take a look at what you've done so far. So she did that, and after she did that, she was told that she would not be allowed to graduate from the program because she did not have the taste level that was necessary to complete the program. And this was when she was only one class shy of graduating. So needless to say, she had already spent over $100,000 on this program to be told that. She ended up having to threaten a lawsuit and fight that administration before she was ultimately allowed to graduate with the degree. So how is Le Fashion Lab fixing this? At Le Fashion Lab, we foster a nurturing, caring environment. Yes, we definitely want you to put your best foot forward. That will only benefit you. I'm very straightforward when I say that the program is an intense program and will require a lot of at-home work on your part to be able to successfully complete it. But at the end of the day, we're here to support you. We will never tell you that you lack taste, collect your tuition, and leave you high and dry. We are committed to your success just as much as you're committed to yours. And the sixth way that Le Fashion Lab is fixing the fashion education industry is that we allow you to create your dreams affordably. So our program is literally 1/10 to a quarter of the cost of a traditional fashion college, because we care about your long-term success and want fashion to be affordable for those who have a passion for this industry. So now that we've spoken about how the Fashion Lab is changing the fashion education industry, let's talk about who is the right fit for this program. It's definitely someone who wants the best and highest return on their financial investment, someone who is passionate and committed to pursuing a future in fashion design. This is something that you've been thinking about ever since you were little, something that you've been thinking about for a long time, and you now know that you need to be able to pursue this goal of yours to feel fulfilled. 3, you value getting expertise, the expertise that you need to be successful, meaning you know that you might be able to find some YouTube tutorials here and there. You might be able to take a class at Joanne's here and there, but you value getting the expertise that you need to turn out really professional work from a program that is guaranteed to take you from the A to Z of learning how to come up with a fashion design concept and bring this design to life with the fashion design and garment construction skills that we teach. You also acknowledge that now is the right time for you to get the skills you need. You've been putting this off for a very long time, and it's something that keeps nagging at you, and you realize that you really can't wait any longer to put your goals and dreams off. It's also someone who has the right coachable attitude. This is someone who is able to put their ego aside to truly learn and embrace what we have to offer. It's someone who knows that if they're told that something that they've worked on is not particularly right, that we're only saying that constructively with your best interest at heart, so you're able to deal with constructive criticism in a positive way. Also, you have a proven track record for completing tasks successfully. So what does that mean? When you look back at your life, you realize that there are many things that you have set out to do. And once you've set out to do something, you're committed to seeing it through to the very end. We've realized that our students fall into one of several categories. Maybe you have a great career, but it's not fulfilling. At the end of the day, one, you realize that you have a great career, but it's not fulfilling. But at the end of the day, you'd rather not have to quit your job to enroll in a full-time fashion college program because you still have responsibilities that you need to take care of. Two, maybe you're interested or you're researching traditional fashion colleges, but you value building a great portfolio and knowing what you're getting yourself into before taking on that level of financial investment. You value being able to put together a stellar portfolio before taking that step. Also, we've noticed that our students are consummate fashion entrepreneurs, like they really see themselves building a fashion apparel brand. That's something that's important to you. Or maybe something that I always tell people to think about and consider as an option. Maybe you want to get into Atlanta's burgeoning, or maybe this is something that I always recommend looking into. Maybe you want to get into Atlanta's burgeoning film and costume industry, and that's another avenue to explore an interest in the fashion apparel industry. So I'd like to share a few testimonials with you before going further. We're very proud of what our students have been able to accomplish. We have one student, her name is Nike Chikio, and she came to us all the way from Nigeria. When Nikechi came to us, her goal was to be able to go back to Nigeria to set up her fashion house. She didn't have any background at all in fashion design, but ultimately she saw herself moving back to Nigeria with a strong understanding of the garment construction process so she could lead her team. And that's exactly what she did. She took our program and then she went back home to Nigeria. And now she has her fashion house that's set up in Nigeria with a team of tailors and seamstresses that work for her. And because she has a strong understanding of how the fashion design and garment construction process works, she's able to lead that team confidently. We also have our student, Kelly Hester. When Kelly came to us, we also have our student, Kelly Hester. Kelly now runs a successful custom-made fashion business, and for the most part, she focuses on the prom season. Sometimes Kelly gets so busy, especially during that time, that we can't even get in touch with her or keep in touch with her. But one of the things that she's super proud of is when she was featured in Alabama Fashion Week, which is where she's from. We also have our student, a former student of ours, Derica Webb. When Derica came to us, she had a background in, she had a bachelor's degree in fashion merchandising, but she realized that she really wanted to get into fashion design. So she came and she took our program, and while she was completing our program, she realized that there was a white space opportunity in the women's sleepwear industry. So ultimately she started her business in women's sleepwear. And that's what she's doing now, and we're happy to see her progress when she posts on social media or caters to her clients. We have another student, her name is Kelly Haber, and when Kelly first came to us, her goal was to be able to attend the Savannah College of Art and Design, but she didn't have any experience at all with sewing or sketching, putting clothes together. And she wanted to prepare herself adequately before going to a traditional fashion college. She's recently graduated from SCAD and now is an assistant designer for North Face. Right after she completed our program, she was accepted to SCAD on a merit-based scholarship, which helped to cover some of her tuition costs, which is always a great thing because traditional fashion colleges can be so expensive. And she told us that she was able to test out of some of her garment construction classes, which ultimately ended up, helping to make the tuition even cheaper. So we're really proud of Kelly and what she's been able to accomplish. And we have another success story through our student or former student, Crystal Bowler. When Crystal first came to us, she was attending Border College, but Border College closed down. So she came to the Fashion Lab to prepare herself to attend the Savannah College of Art and Design. And that's exactly what she did. She gained acceptance into SCAD. And in 2017, she was named the Emerging Talent Honoree at the National Black Arts Festival. And her work was also featured at the Wearable Arts Gala at the Waco Theatre Center, which is an event co-created by Miss Tina Knowles Lawson, in other words, Beyonce's mother. So this is just a snapshot of what some of our students have accomplished. If you go to our website, lefashionlab.com/about-us/testimonial. If you go to our website, lefashionlab.com/about-us/testimonials, you'll be able to sit through a video that we created with one of our recent graduates. So you can hear her experience. What was it like attending Le Fashion Lab? How did she feel in the beginning? How did she feel in the middle of the program? And at the end of the program, ultimately, was she satisfied with what she learned? So go ahead and take a look at that video to learn even more about what some of our students have to say about our program. So what is the vision for where we're going? Our vision is to completely disrupt the fashion education industry. We see grave problems in the fashion education industry. Fashion colleges are feeding on people's desires to live out their dreams and are leaving them to fail with massive debt and limited chance for success. We are disrupting the fashion education industry by giving our students a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study professional fashion design without incurring crippling debt, without having to quit your job, without having to spend 4 years, and without having to deal with instructors who don't have the time to devote to their students' success. So our vision is to give our students all the skills that they need to start their own business. Our vision is to give our students all the skills they need to start their own business successfully, including the design, garment construction, technical, and entrepreneurial skills that they need to confidently start, maintain, and run their fashion businesses. And we continue to build strong industry relationships with different businesses in and around, different apparel businesses in and around the Atlanta and we continue to build strong relationships with different apparel businesses in and around the Atlanta area to further support our students' growth. So what will you learn at Le Fashion Lab? So let's talk about what you'll learn at Le Fashion Lab. At Le Fashion Lab, we focus on 5 main topics. One of these areas is sewing. So in our program, in our fashion design and garment construction certificate program, we have beginner through advanced sewing. In the beginner class, we pretend like you have basically no experience in sewing at all. So we need to take you from point A. If you have little to no experience sewing, that's totally fine. We welcome you. We take you through the basics of how to use your sewing machine, various machine and hand sewing techniques, inserting various types of zippers, etc. At the end of that class, you walk away with a binder of techniques so that you can reference them later on. In Intro to Sewing 2, we continue along those same lines with teaching you various other techniques that are also used in different garments. So facing at neckline, bias binding at neckline, how to do a welt pocket. And in all of these techniques, you're building up your confidence as a seamstress or a sewer. Finally, when you get to intermediate sewing, you start sewing whole garments from start to finish. And this is where you're going to see the techniques that you've been learning in Intro to Sewing 1 and 2. These techniques, you're starting to apply them to actual garments. The garments done in intermediate sewing are done in miniature form, just to make sure that you have as much time as possible to create as many garments as possible. And in that class, you'll be completing 2 to 4 garments. And then finally, you get to advanced sewing, where you'll be sewing a lined, tailored blazer from start to finish. And the point of this class is not so much for you to memorize the process of how to make a tailored blazer, but for you to see that those techniques that you learned in Intro to Sewing 1 and 2 are the same techniques that are used in putting together a professionally finished tailored garment. So that's our sewing bucket. And of course, in many of our other classes, sewing is involved, but this is how we get you started in sewing. Once you've mastered that, another bucket that we focus on is sketching and fashion illustration. In this bucket, we have about 5 classes as well. We have Intro to Fashion and Sketching. We have Beginning Fashion Illustration, Intermediate Fashion Illustration, and Advanced Fashion Illustration. In Intro to Fashion and Sketching, this class is much more than just about sketching. It teaches you the process of fashion design. How do you come up with that concept? Once you've come up with the concept, how do you come up with the colors that you'll be using in your collection? How do you come up with how do you select the fabrics that you've used in that you will use in your collection? Once all this prep work has been done, how do you start sketching this out? And even if sketching is something that you're not super comfortable with, we welcome you. We have tips and techniques to get you there. So we get the ideas out of your head and onto paper and give you techniques and tips for how to improve them. And ultimately, when you've done that class, you walk away with a collection that you sketched out from start to finish. And you'll be walking away with at least 2 different portfolio pieces that, who knows, you can use them to apply for different job opportunities in the apparel industry, or at least it sets the groundwork for you to know what to do when you actually start the process of building collections for your own business. So that's just Intro to Fashion and Sketching. When you get to Beginning Fashion Illustration, it gets more technical. Your illustration techniques get more technical. So in that class, you go through different poses in fashion illustration and how to make them look really beautiful. When you get to Intermediate Fashion Illustration, it's about your rendering techniques. For example, if you're doing a floral dress, how do you make it really look like floral? How do you make plaid really look like plaid? How do you make leather look really like leather? So in Intermediate Fashion Illustration, you go through different rendering techniques. And finally, when you get to Advanced Fashion Illustration, this is kind of where your coursework starts to come full circle, because the garments that you sketch in Advanced Fashion Illustration are ultimately the ones that you'll be bringing to life with your garment construction skill in your collections class. Now, let's talk about another bucket that we focus on. The third bucket that we focus on is pattern making. And for those of you who don't know what pattern making is, I'm going to give you an idea. So pattern making is a key part of the garment construction process. Let's say you are going to be making me a dress. You'd have to take my measurements. So you take the measurements of my bust, my waist, my hip. Depending on how long you want the dress to be, you take the measurement of the length of the dress. If the dress has sleeves, then you're going to measure my arms. So you have all of these measurements for your client. And depending on what garments you are making, there's a formula that needs to be followed. So in this case, you're making me a dress, so you're going to use the formula for making a dress. So once you plug the formula in, then you'll be making a shape on a piece of paper. And this shape, which I also sometimes call a technical drawing, this shape or technical drawing is what you call your pattern. So there's going to be a pattern for the front of the dress, a pattern for the back, a pattern for the sleeve, If the dress has a color, that will also have a pattern. Ultimately, you'll cut your pattern pieces out of paper, place your different pieces of paper on top of your fabric, cut the fabric out, and sew the pieces together. Ultimately, that's what will become your garment. So that's pattern making in a nutshell. In the pattern making series of classes, we have beginning pattern making 1, 2, 3, and 4, intermediate pattern making 1 and 2, and also advanced pattern making. And let me break those down for you. So beginning pattern making 1 just focuses on getting you to understand how to go about pattern making. So that's the very basic class of how to go about making a pattern. Beginning pattern making 2 focuses on different types of bodices. Beginning pattern making 3 on different types of skirts. Beginning pattern making 4 on different types of pants. When you get to intermediate pattern making 1 and 2, that's when you have a model in the class or a client. You learn to take this person's measurement and make them a garment to fit their body. So in intermediate pattern making 1, you'll be making the person a dress to fit her body. And in intermediate pattern making 2, you'll be making the person a pair of pants to fit their body. So ultimately, that's a very important part of the fashion design and garment construction process. How to take a client's measurements and make them a garment to fit. And ultimately, when you get to advanced pattern making, the focus in that class is on making patterns for a blazer. So depending on your speed, you'll either be making 1 or 2 blazers in that class. So in a nutshell, that's our pattern making series of classes. Another bucket that we focus on under garment construction is draping. And let me explain to you what draping is. If you've ever watched Project Runway, a lot of the designers on that program tend to use draping. And how it works is this time you don't need measurements, because you're going to take your fabric and directly pin it to a mannequin and kind of sculpt your garment out that way. So unlike pattern making, there's no need to take any measurements. You're creating the garment to fit the mannequin. And so long as your client fits the size of your mannequin, then you're good to go. So we also have our draping series of classes where you'll go through the process of draping a dress, draping a pair of pants, and also bringing to life one of your own unique designs using your draping technique as well. So the next bucket that we focus on is your technical or software skills. And in that particular program, we focus on 2 different software. We focus on Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop with a specific emphasis on Adobe Illustrator. So in fashion, it's very important for you to know how to use Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. And why is this? If you intend on scaling your business to the point of soliciting outside manufacturing help, then this is how you will communicate with your manufacturer, by using a technical flat. And in Adobe Illustrator, we teach you how to make a technical flat. So in addition to this, you'll learn how to create a technical specification or a technique. You will learn how to create a technical specification or a spec sheet, which is also an important part of technical fashion design. I can tell you that in my job in my field as both a corporate designer and a designer that also worked for small businesses, I was on Adobe Illustrator, or I was using Adobe Illustrator basically every day. So this is definitely a skill that you don't want to leave without. Additionally, if you're one of those who is open to different positions or job opportunities at a corporate level, then one of the first skills that they require for you to be employed in the fashion field is for you to be able to use Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. So we want to make sure that when you leave the Fashion Lab, you're fully prepared for a successful fashion career. So let's talk a little bit more about how these classes break down per semester. I just went into detail with how our program runs Okay, I'm backing up. After I spoke about technical software skills, I need to wrap up, so I'm going to back up a little bit. So the fifth bucket that we focus on is your technical or software skills. But we also have additional classes that don't fall into those buckets. We have our textiles class or introduction to textiles class, where we want to give you a solid understanding of the different fabrics that are available for your use and how they are best used in fashion design. We also have a fabric manipulation class, an introduction to fashion business and entrepreneurship class that I've already mentioned, and ultimately your collections class, where you pull it all together by coming up with a concept for your final collection, sketching it out, and bringing these garments to life using the design and garment construction skills that you've learned up to that point. So the collections class is the final class in the program. So how does this break down per semester? Which class will you be taking first? What does the chronology look like? If you go on our website, you go to lefashionlab.com if you go on our website, lefashionlab.com/classes, you will see a breakdown of each semester and the chronology in which you'll be taking classes. So let's talk a little bit more about cost. How does this compare to other schools? I've mentioned before that currently the cost of a traditional fashion college is ridiculous. You have schools like the Savannah College of Art and Design that cost about $180,000 for a 4-year degree. So ultimately you're looking at spending about $45,000 a year for that program. And then you have other schools like Clark Atlanta University and the Art Institute of Atlanta that cost about $88,000 or $72,000 for a 4-year degree. Because of this massive debt, after graduation, most graduates end up just taking any job they can to make ends meet, which defeats the purpose of why you would go to fashion college in the first place. I was recently speaking to an associate of mine who went to my alma mater, and she's never been employed in the fashion field. Actually, she's never done any fashion after graduating. And I asked her, how did that happen? And she said, well, when she first graduated, she wanted to start her own business, but she had no idea how to do that. So she decided that she was going to try to get a job in the fashion industry. So she applied many times to many different companies and never was able to get her foot in the door because she didn't have a strong enough portfolio. So ultimately, she ended up working a desk job at a logistics company because she had responsibilities that she had to take care of. So ultimately, that's what's happening with a lot of students that go the traditional fashion college route. They end up leaving with massive debt, no idea of how to get their own business started. Many of them not having an opportunity to work in the fashion field, and so ultimately just having to take a traditional 9-to-5 to be able to make ends meet, which defeats the purpose of why they went to fashion college in the first place. So at Le Fashion Lab, you'll be learning the same skills you would be learning in a traditional 4-year fashion college, minus the lifetime debt, without having to quit your job, minus the 4-year commitment, minus the fluff classes and prerequisites, plus an introduction to fashion business and entrepreneurship and where to get started, plus hands-on instruction and support to learn these skills. So let's talk more about the tuition investment. What does that look like? So like I mentioned, our fashion design and garment construction program, you can decide to take this through the 1-year track or the 2-year track. They're both the same programs. One just takes longer depending on how much time you have to commit to your studies. So the 1-year program breaks down in 3 semesters, and I'll give you an example. If you're starting in the August program, then the first semester is August to November. The second semester is January to April, and the third and final semester is approximately May to August. Each semester is $6,997. And for the 2-year program, the breakdown throughout the year is the same, but you'd be doing it for 2 years. So August to November, January to April, and then May to August for 2 years. And each semester is $3,697. Thanks for being with me. I hope you found this informational informative. I know for sure that if you're a person with a passion for studying fashion design, and if it's something that you've been thinking about all your life, but you've done your research and realized that a traditional fashion college is not a good fit for you, then welcome to Le Fashion Lab, where we are disrupting fashion education. Then welcome to Le Fashion Lab, where we are disrupting the fashion education industry and put our students' needs. Then welcome to Le Fashion Lab, where we are disrupting the fashion education industry and putting our students' needs first. Thank you.